So welcome everybody. Thank you for giving us the time to talk a little bit about what we do. I suppose I'm going to start with a little bit of context in that, Albion has been investing for many years, and within that, healthcare has been a very important theme. So over the best part of 3 decades, we've been doing some form of healthcare or other. But what has happened over that time is a lot of how healthcare is approached has changed dramatically, and whilst looking for long themes, we also adjust our investment strategy very much in line with where we see the opportunities. And that's why I think today is really important, because healthcare has become more complicated, more specialist. We've got health systems throughout the globe under huge pressure, both financially and in terms of the manpower that resource it. And everything gets more complicated. The provision of medicines is more difficult. And as a result, there is a great push to see how you can use technology to make things better. So this to me is a fundamentally important role that we as venture capital investors can contribute to, not only an interesting investment area, but actually to society more broadly. So if we narrow that down a bit to where we are today and why, I've got two excellent panelists who will do a bit more of an introduction in a moment, is that we want to talk about the two sort of key themes that we'll look at the moment, which are digital care and digital pharma. And I will let my learned colleagues tell you more about that. But what I think I'd like to do, just to start with, if I may, is Molly, could you just give the audience a sense of what you did before you joined Albion, why you went into venture, and why you chose Albion to be the place to do your investing?
Yep, so lovely to see you all. My name is Gilmartin. So I started out my career as a doctor, and actually got exposed to technology through service development in the NHS, where actually the latest scientific research was not the challenge, but just communication between different hospitals was really difficult. So I ended up moving out into a startup. I was in 2 startups, provider-facing software, so stuff trying to make things more efficient and effective. And realized the big opportunity there was in technology for not just making things easier, but actually improving the way care is delivered, doing it in a way that reduces the cost, but also improves the access. And I realized that what technology was a vehicle for making all of the change required in these big organizations. I then spent some time at McKinsey, mostly in the healthcare practice, focusing on both health systems and health technology, and joined Albion just over 3.5 years ago. For me, I love being at the face of the latest research and innovation. And I think in venture, we're working closely with startups to realize their opportunity, in the sense that healthcare is challenging sometimes, because just because lots of patients use your product or lots of doctors engage doesn't actually mean that company will scale and make money. And actually, there's a way with some of the companies we have in our portfolio, which we can go into in more detail, that if you can help a company understand and work with them from that early stage through their journey to work out how are they going to get reimbursed, what does the pathway need to look like, we really can actually realize the opportunity of technology when thinking about the service component. So what we start to look at is actually what is the workflow the technology is applying to, and how by looking at that you can realize value for the customer and for the patient. So I'm very passionate about improving healthcare, and I feel, at this time, it's one of the most exciting spaces to be investing in.
Fantastic, Molly. So Leigh, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Leigh, Brody, investment manager at Albion. So background by me, I was at MIT in a little lab doing biochemistry, just enjoying my little science. I got invited to finish my PhD in Imperial and moved over and was working on a drug. I launched a company out of that and found how hard it is to develop drugs. That got shortly acquired, and then I started a company in the gene editing space where we were combining technology, answering biological questions. Built that up as CSO, and that got acquired. I joined another company where I met Albion, where I sat on the board with them, Quell Therapeutics. And I thought, who are these fantastic people, and how do I get on the other side of the table? And working with investors, raising money on my own companies, I really loved just learning about the venture space. And so now I will talk about what I work on next.
Fantastic. So I think you'll all agree we've got some excellent panelists to talk about this important subject. So let's start back a second and just talk about health technology. And let's try and think about what is happening in health technology, or health tech as we abbreviate it to, in Europe. And Molly runs a very useful and very major piece of work every year, where she looks at all huge number of health technology companies across Europe, and therefore very well placed to just give us a sense of what is the investment universe that we are looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we look across Europe at companies that have more than 10 employees, have raised money in the last 5 years, and were founded in the last 10 years. So not all of the really early stage parts, but they have to reach a certain amount of scale and raise institutional funding. So we screened this year over 5,000 companies. We then bucketed that across our themes of how we think about our thesis, which is digital care and digital pharma. And we came to just over 1,000 companies. And what's really fun is, having been doing this now for the last few years, I've become a bit of a nerd about it, because the trends are what really is cool. Companies love the fact that they're segmented into a bucket, but actually what I love to see is, well, what's changed and what are the insights? None of the insights are probably going to make you fall off your chair, but they do really feed into then how we think about our investments, both our current portfolio companies and how we work with them to help them scale to be larger, and also how we think about new investments and the opportunities. So there were three main themes. So on digital care, which I'm going to focus on, and Leigh will then talk more to the digital pharma side, we think about both sides along the value chain. So on digital care, we're thinking from somebody being well, pre-diagnosis, pre-symptoms even, to symptom checking, the diagnostic part, then the treatment and management of conditions. And on digital pharma, we look not at the biotech part, but everything from research and discovery, platforms that can improve that, through to clinical trial operations, and then drugs in the real world, market access, reimbursement, and real world evidence. So on the digital care side, the big themes were the role of AI. The interesting thing about AI is, there's so much information in healthcare. And one of the problems is, how do you find insights from this information? So LLMs have produced a massive opportunity where suddenly we can now assess lots of information in electronic health records, all the wearable data. Suddenly there's an ability to summarize all of that and surface insights in a way that there wasn't the capacity or ability to before. So AI is really transforming the diagnostics and clinical decision support space, which is, if you think about it, tools that potentially in a certain condition can help a doctor or a healthcare professional decide how to triage a patient, how high priority they are, but also what's the best pathway for them to go down. And what I think is really cool about this, you can see the nerdiness coming out, is if you think about how do we deliver healthcare to everyone at a very high standard, it's kind of impossible. Because what you do with a big public system that you're trying to deliver really good care is, you have to kind of get everyone quite good care. But you can't give everyone gold standard, because it would be far too expensive. But if you use technology to work out how to engage the patient, which ones would be absolutely fine with virtual, which ones need the inpatient appointment, which, based on the electronic health data we have and real world evidence, which drug's going to work best for that patient, so they don't have to go through 3 that don't work before they get the 4th line. Technology can help us with all of that. And so the big thing that's interesting with AI is, it's not necessarily as wacky as sometimes, there's lots of wacky, but where I think it's really exciting is when you're applying it into tech-enabled service companies. So a good example of that is Oviva. It's one of our largest healthcare companies. It started out doing type 2 diabetes management. So it was the behavioural part. So when a patient got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they'd be referred to Oviva by their GP. In Germany and the UK are their biggest markets, but they're in a number of European markets. And then they would help digitally, all virtual, to manage that patient. Because rather than going to your GP once a month and getting your blood test to see how your sugar management is, this can be done daily. You can be interacting with that patient at their home. What's fascinating is how markets change. So the biggest precursor to type 2 diabetes is obesity. And obviously that's a big topic at the moment. So then Oviva was able to spread sort of upstream and start managing obesity. So now it's a virtual weight management platform. It can provide and prescribe GLP-1s, the weight loss jabs, but it does that as part of a holistic wraparound package. Now that gets me really excited, because the average BMI they treat is 47, so that's really high. These are patients that really need the treatment. But actually, they've just been starting to release research. Over 50% of the patients they treat have clinical depression. So you're starting to actually link into other disease areas from one. And then even better than that, when patients stop the GLP-1s but continue using Aviva, they're starting to get research that 4 months after they've maintained their weight loss, which is about 17% in 12 months, which is pretty impressive. So that makes me excited because this is not just about getting more access to medications, this is about the wraparound care that means that you get impact long-term patient outcomes. And that's why the NHS really is starting to scale the use of Aviva, and in Germany lots of the public-backed insurers use Aviva. So it's starting to get really big numbers when it comes to revenue, but also amazing outcomes. So that's just one example. But AI can be applied there to help improve that engagement, predict what the patient needs. And I think that is an example, I guess, of one of the trends of this virtual first care across digital care and the use of AI within that to help improve the engagement and the effectiveness of what they're doing.
Brilliant, brilliant, Mo. So let's just stick on that AI theme because it is so pervasive in everything we do. And I imagine that lots of people in the audience are thinking about how AI could potentially impact their own businesses. So let's think more about on the sort of tech pharma side, but very specifically around tech bio, which is an area I know you've been doing a lot of work and indeed have made our first investment.
That's correct. So just to back up, I mean, what tech bio means is it's this new generation of companies that have been formed in the last maybe decade. And these are ones that blend, as the name says, technology and biology. So it's leveraging technology to answer really difficult biological questions that have not been answered before. And these are using AI systems, right, to think about how to use engineering questions using AI platforms to answer questions about biology, drug discovery, protein engineering, even lab automation. And especially interesting in the last 4 years, this new kind of onset of LLMs have really leveraged this. But if you step back and think, where is the data that LLMs are from, right? It's from the internet, and the internet can be wrong, right? Biology isn't really well known on the internet. So what this new generation of companies are doing are leveraging these LLM systems and using proprietary internal data to build models to answer questions that have never been able to be done before. What we really like about it is the fact that these platform technologies that the companies are coming up with real value drivers. Now, we're seeing two business models from the new wave of tech bio companies. Companies that are developing asset-centric pieces, so they build a platform, they identify 2 or 3 different drugs, they maybe do early licensing for pharma companies, they build partnerships, and that's one piece. The other one is more of a tech piece where they build a platform, they have maybe subscriptions or memberships to these companies. Now, for us at Albion, we really like ones that are blending these. They develop 1 or 2 assets. They have a platform that has reproducible, trustable systems that can do multiple shots on goal, then maybe 1 or 2 drugs. And if you think about it from like the macroeconomic perspective, the reason why pharma companies are placed so much higher value than biotech companies is that, biotech companies might have 1 hit, but it doesn't mean the next 3 hits are going to be success. Whereas pharma have a better history of that. You can make the arguments why those two are there, but what tech biology enables is platforms that have really learned what made that drug work and go back and apply that thinking for the next 3 or 4 assets, and a lot of positive controls, so they can build up data sets that maybe didn't exist before. So as Will alluded, we did our first deal in this recently, and this took, I think, 12 to 18 months of finding the right piece of what is the right model, what is the right targets they're going to, and what's the right kind of blended de-risk commercial model that's going to make this business a success.
I'm going to move up on to how we think about growing these businesses, because clearly our job is to provide that crucial capital to allow these health tech entrepreneurs to build something that's category leading. And to be category leading, that means you need to be global in this day and age. So with the benefit of the audience, it'd be great to talk about how do you think about these entrepreneurs expanding outside the UK? How do you think about Europe? How do you think about the US? And obviously with an American on our panel, we have particularly good insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Albion, we have a number of operating partners across go-to-market, product, and also the organizational side. And then one of our partners, internally, Jane Redden, leads our people and talent function. So what's really key there is we're not doing the recruiting for these companies, but we are giving them strategic support as they think about scaling their organization. And when starting to look at a new geography, the right expertise is key. The difficulty with healthcare is, taking Aviva, for example, the reimbursement in the UK, Germany, Switzerland, France, all different. Now, the clinical pathway stays the same because you treat obesity in a similar way in each of those countries, but navigating that is very complex. And the difference of doing it right first time with an experienced person versus learning could be a year, 18 months. It could be a big difference. So what we do at Albion is twofold. One, we really support the teams whenever they are scaling their senior leadership team. And Jane will lean in a lot with helping pick the right recruiters to help them find these key hires and talent. And also, even as investors, we lean into the interview process because we can see what Gold Star looks like across our portfolio. And then secondly, in the healthcare team, we spend a lot of time building our network. So with Oviva, I've been working with them whenever they're thinking about their advisory board for how to think about the future of commissioning these sorts of services. But we build that network so that then whenever on a board meeting, a portfolio company says, okay, we're now thinking that our next target is thinking about the US. It's like, well, here are the 10 best people around reimbursement codes, regulation that you should go and speak to. And I think that is really key for the founders. And I think the key also is because we focus on this tech-enabled service aspect, so actually delivering a pathway in the digital care side, there's a lot more value to be unlocked there. And so suddenly it's not just a point solution software. Some of these contracts can be really valuable at a health system level. So we can help companies really strategically prioritize not just where to expand, but also when to, because that's an important decision that they need to make too. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think when you have to think about the US, it's not just one market, it's 50 different markets.
100%.
And I think when we talk to some founders, they just don't quite realize, what it takes to get into this. And I sit as a mentor on the Cedars-Sinai Hospital Accelerator. And it's incredible. They come to us and they're like, please help us find companies, that we want to bring here and build into the network. And they'll have one call me. They're like, wow, UK market is so different. And they really don't know how it works here. So I think having these kind of leverage points and we work on kind of these go to US playbooks of like how to integrate, where to integrate, who are the right people to talk to, time, capital requirements to do that. It's something we spend a lot of time kind of looking at companies and mentoring around.
So if you think about 2026 and the years ahead, what are your predictions for where real investment value will be created?
I think the big thing that people are talking about is consumerization of healthcare. Now, what does that actually mean? So for me, I definitely think that's happening. We as patients, we're all patients in some ways, we expect consumer grade experiences now. And it's really disappointing whenever a healthcare experience is not consumer grade. But are we willing to pay lots of money for that consumer grade experience? A little bit. Self-pay was 37 billion last year in the UK, and NHS budget's like 180-ish. So it's significant. PMI is growing. It's private medical insurance. So we're having more of a blended reimbursement model to healthcare. So with our virtual first care companies, we're really helping them think not just about an NHS contract, but depending on what they're doing, should they be thinking about self-pay? Should they be talking to Bupa and AXA and Vitality about what that looks like? So I think what I predict is we're going to, in the UK and in Europe, be looking at more of a blended reimbursement across public systems and private and self-pay. But patients are much more engaged in their healthcare post-COVID than they were before. And patients are expecting amazing experiences. And patients are deciding where they go for their healthcare. So Oviva is a B2B business. It's, as I mentioned, it's reimbursed by state-backed systems in Europe. But the patient decides they'd like to go to Oviva rather than to the tertiary weight management clinic at their local hospital. And they can advocate for that. So what we love jargon, but we've created this B to C to B hypothesis. So actually the patient's deciding where they go. They're not paying for it, but they're choosing it. And then it's being reimbursed by the B. And I think that's going to be so key. So when we're looking at companies, we have to think about the patient, even if they're not the payer for it. And then we need to think about the cost of care and the business case that the B, whether it's the NHS or an insurer, is going to need to see to reimburse it. And that's going to be outcomes. That's going to be cost of care reduction. The patient's going to care about an amazing experience and good outcomes for them. So you've got a lot to think about, but I think it's really exciting for what the future of healthcare looks like.
And we can't help to be excited with you. So Leigh, what do you think? What do you mean?
I'll kind of tackle it from the tech bio perspective. We've seen, like I said before, we've seen these different generations of companies that have come out. And I think one thing that people have really taken into consideration is upfront, you need the right data input to build out the proper platform. You can't just use publicly available data because everyone has that. That's not going to build the moat. That's not really going to make your models think better than the person across the street. So what I'd like to see in the next kind of year, 2 years, because let's be honest, it's not going to take just 1 year, is more tech bio companies doing kind of pilot partnerships with the NHS and tapping into the amazing data that we have here that is just a little difficult to unlock. We have it's a full closed circuit in the UK, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited to do deals here. Is we have a huge data set from the NHS, we have amazing academic work, we have amazing hospitals. So in one street, you can come up with a drug, you can manufacture and you can treat the patients, and you have the NHS to run the whole thing. So, for me, pilot partnerships, better initial data for tech bio companies, and obviously to use the great capital from people in this room to fund it.